In this lesson, we're going to cover access badge cloning. Now, in our modern electronic access control systems, we often use radio frequency identification or near-field communication-based access control badges to gain access to our offices and other secure spaces. Radio frequency identification, known as RFID, and near-field communication, known as NFC, are popular technologies that are used for contactless authentication in various applications, including access control systems, payment systems, and identification systems. While these systems offer convenience, they aren't immune to attack. One of the most prevalent vulnerabilities you need to be aware of in terms of RFID and NFC technologies is the ability to easily conduct access badge cloning to bypass your authentication systems. So, let's take a look at what access badge cloning is, how it's conducted, and the ways to mitigate this type of attack. First, what is access badge cloning? Well, access badge cloning refers to copying the data from an RFID or NFC card or badge onto another card or device. The cloned card or device then behaves as if it was the original access badge, which can be used to trick the system into granting access or completing a transaction for the attacker. Now, at its core, access badge cloning involves making an unauthorized copy of an authorized person's access badge so the threat actor can bypass security measures without ever possessing the original badge. So, how does an attacker clone that access badge? Well, there's 4 basic steps: scanning, data extraction, writing to a new card or device, and using a cloned access badge. The first step in access badge cloning is going to be scanning or reading the targeted individual's access badge. An attacker can use a handheld RFID or NFC reader to capture the data from a victim's card and store it for further processing. This type of scanning can be done discreetly and often occurs without the access badge owner's knowledge. For example, an attacker might hide an access badge scanner in their backpack, and as they walk by an authorized individual while holding this concealed reader in their bag, they can then read the RFID or NFC data without needing physical contact with the authorized person's access badge. An attacker still will need to be relatively close to the access badge to clone it, such as within 1 to 2 inches for an NFC access badge and 2 to 10 inches for an RFID access badge. But with a stronger antenna, you may be able to double those ranges, but that's still going to make the attacker have to get pretty close to their victim in order to clone that badge. Second, we have data extraction. Once the data is captured, the attacker extracts the relevant authentication credentials from the card, such as a unique identifier or a set of encrypted data. This process can be done at any time after the initial scan is conducted. Third, we have writing to a new card or device. Using specialized writing tools, the attacker will then transfer the extracted data onto a blank RFID or NFC card or other compatible device. For example, when I conduct penetration testing, I like to use the Flipper 0 for my RFID and NFC cloning activities. This type of device is really simple to use, it's compact, and it can store a lot of different codes that you've already scanned during your penetration test, as opposed to having a physically cloned access badge that only contains one user identity or code. Fourth, we have using the cloned access badge. Now that the attacker has cloned that access badge, and they have a duplicate of it, or they have a device that has copied it in their hand, they can now gain unauthorized access to your building, computer systems, or even make payments using a cloned NFC-enabled credit card. Now, let me show you how this works in the real world. First, let me show you how this door is designed to work. Notice here there is a badge reader on the left, and we're using an RFID tag, which we're going to have as a small keychain attachment. As I touch this to the door will unlock, authorizing us to enter the building. This is what it should look like for an authorized employee. Now that we see what it's supposed to look like, let me show you how we can clone that key tag. Notice here I've been able to get a hold of that key tag, and I have my Flipper 0. So first I'm going to take my Flipper 0. I'm going to select that I want to use the 125 kilohertz RFID, which is the type of tag, and I'm going to select read. Once I select read, I will then hold my Flipper 0 over it, and it will then ask and read the pre-shared key from that. And you can see it here on the screen, which I am blurring out for safety reasons. Now that I've done that, I can then save that to my Flipper device, give it a name. In this case, I'll use the default, and now it's saved inside of this device. Now, if I want to open that door using my Flipper device, I can simply use the emulate option, or I can write this code back to a blank RFID tag and then use that to be able to access the door. Here you can see I'm back at that door. I'm taking my Flipper 0. I'm going to select the 125 kilohertz RFID. I'm going to then go into my saved area, which has the clone tag that we've saved before to this device, and I will select it. Once I have that, I can select emulate and hold this up to the door, and it will operate just as if it was that RFID tag, and I can enter the building as if I was that authorized employee. As you can probably guess, access badge cloning is a security concern for us because of the ease of its execution, its ability to be stealthy when conducting the attack, and its potential large use inside of compromising physical security. Now, every day, the tools required for access badge cloning become more readily available online and continue to get less expensive over time. This makes it easy even for unskilled attackers to attempt access badge cloning. Access badge cloning is also considered to be a stealthy way to conduct a physical security attack, since you don't need to maintain possession of the original access badge or card, and instead, you can simply copy and reuse the data from the card without raising suspicion. Also, it's important to think about the fact that cloned access badges can be used to compromise physical security that has large, widespread implications. Using these cloned access badges, the attacker can gain access to your building, defeat your physical security controls that are trying to protect your organization's security data, and it can be used to conduct financial crimes like credit card or payment fraud when used against NFC-based payment systems. So, how can you stop access badge cloning? Well, first, you should implement advanced encryption in your card-based authentication systems. Many basic RFID or NFC systems use simple identifiers without any form of robust encryption. By ensuring data on your organization's access badges is encrypted using advanced algorithms, it becomes much more difficult for an attacker to clone your organization's access badges. Second, you should implement multi-factor authentication, known as MFA. Instead of solely relying on an RFID or NFC badge for access, you should combine them with a second form of authentication, like a PIN, a password, or some kind of biometric input. This way, even if the badge is cloned, the attacker still cannot use it because they need that secondary form of authentication to gain access to your secure facilities. For example, many of the organizations I worked for over the years have implemented RFID access badges as the first authentication factor and an 8-digit security PIN as the second authentication factor. This way, even if the attacker has my access badge, they still can't get into the building as me because they don't know my secret 8-digit PIN, and they can't enter it after scanning my access badge or their cloned version of my access badge. Third, you should regularly update your security protocols. By periodically updating the encryption keys and authentication mechanisms being used, your organization can prevent cloned access badges from being usable for extended periods of time. Fourth, you should educate your users. It is important to inform your users about the risk of badge cloning and to encourage them to be cautious and report any suspicious activities or unauthorized access attempts that are being levied against their badge. Your users should also be aware of where they store their cards to ensure the attacker doesn't get access to them to be able to clone them in the first place. Fifth, your users should implement the use of shielded wallets or sleeves with your RFID access badges. RFID shielding wallets or sleeves can prevent scanners from being able to read the card while it's inside one of those, and this offers us extra layers of protection. Sixth and finally, you should monitor and audit your access logs. By regularly reviewing access logs, your organization can help identify any unauthorized or suspicious access attempts. If a cloned access badge is going to be used, you may be able to identify patterns or anomalies that indicate the access badge is a clone badge and not actually the original. For example, if you clone my access badge and then try to enter our offices while I'm supposed to be at a conference on the other side of the country, that should trigger an alert because the cloned access badge would appear to be illegitimate simply because I wasn't even in the same state as the building you're trying to gain access to using my cloned access badge. So remember, access badge cloning refers to the copying of data from an RFID or NFC card or badge onto another card or device. This is one of the biggest vulnerabilities involved with using RFID and NFC technologies when you're dealing with access control systems. To prevent access badge cloning, you really need to understand the threat and implement the appropriate measures like user education and awareness training, using shielded wallets or sleeves, and monitoring and auditing your access logs to detect improper or impossible access badge usage within your organization.